There are stories that make you look up to the sky, and there are legends that make you look down into the deepest depths of your soul. This is the story of a man who killed no monsters. He did not draw a bow, he did not wield a sword. He only brought with him his lyre and a love so strong that he dared to walk down the gates of Hades, face death, and fail, because he loved too truly. He was Orpheus, the most talented musician in all of Greek mythology, and this was his fateful song. Before Orpheus could even speak, the world knew he was born to make sounds that even the gods stopped to listen. His birthplace was Pymplaea, an ancient city located near the foot of Mount Olympus, in the Perea region. Not far from there was the Helicon spring, where the muses often sat and sang, and Apollo often came to play his harp. In such a sacred land, it is not surprising that Orpheus's birth was a gift from the universe. His mother was Calliope, one of the 9 muses, goddesses of epic poetry. About his father, there are 2 legends. King Oeagrus of Thrace, a mortal musician who was highly respected by the muses. Apollo, the god of light, poetry, and music, who was once infatuated with Calliope. So, if he was the son of a king, Orpheus had the blood of an artist. But if he was the son of a god, Orpheus was born with the immortal soul of music. When he first learned to crawl, Orpheus tapped to the rhythm of the rain. When he first learned to walk, he sang to the sound of the stream. As he grew up, the lyre became a part of his body, like his hands or his heart.
On the summit of Mount Parnassus, where the mists hang like the breath of the gods, where the winds blow like ancient whispers, Orpheus grew up, surrounded by poetry, music, and knowledge. There were no whips, no battles, no wrestling like other heroic children. The boy was raised by the immortal muses. Some sang, some recited, some taught rhythm, some taught how to move the soul with song. One morning, as the first rays of dawn colored the mountain peaks, Apollo appeared. With a sun-like light in his eyes, he came to the muses. And in the middle of that circle sat a boy, silent, watching the birds dancing in the sky. Apollo looked at him and smiled. This child does not belong to silence. He was born to speak with the sound of the harp, so that even the dead would listen silently. And the god gave Orpheus the golden lyre, a sacred treasure which had echoed in the most ancient sacrifices of Olympus. Not only did Apollo give him the lyre, he also taught Orpheus every secret melody, notes never recorded, sounds that could summon the wind, make tears fall, and slow down time. Calliope did not teach her son to read, but to feel the words. She did not force Orpheus to write, but to recite poetry with primal emotions, as if each song were a scar on the soul. Do not sing for pleasure. Sing when your heart aches, and let the hearts of others ache with you. True music is when the listener is silent, not out of respect, but because they are speechless. Orpheus soon surpassed all his teachers, all the gods. Even as a teenager, he could play the lyre so that birds forgot to fly, wild animals lay down to sleep, and trees leaned toward him as if listening to a lost fairy tale. In the lands where warriors learned to ride horses and wield swords, Orpheus learned only one thing: to make the world stop and listen. Every melody he wrote was not just art, it was a prayer, a message, a spell. Later, when he descended into the underworld, no one needed to tell him what he brought with him. Just say, "Orpheus plays." The world below wept. And so, while Achilles was taught to strike, Odysseus was taught to deceive, Perseus was taught to fly, Orpheus learned only one thing: to make the hearts of men tremble with invisible sounds. And from that moment on, the world was never the same.
In the age of heroes, when great names such as Heracles, Theseus, Castor and Pollux, and Jason set out in search of the Golden Fleece, there was a strange name among the warriors: Orpheus. People asked, what use is a harpist on a ship filled with war gods? But the prophet Chiron, the wisest centaur of Greece, said, without Orpheus, there is no return. When the Argo set sail, carrying the hopes, blood, and life of all Greece, Orpheus did not carry a sword, spear, or shield. He only carried a golden lyre, a gentle gaze, and a heart that still hummed with sounds no one had ever written down. By day, Orpheus helped sailors forget their fatigue with songs of the sea. By night, he lulled the waves to sleep, calmed the winds, and sang to the stars about the dreams of mankind. On the Argo, Orpheus was not a musician. He was a spirit. One day, a strange fog appeared in the distance, where no birds flew, no ships docked. It was the island of Sirens, a land of death, where music also carried the scent of blood. The Sirens were half-human, half-bird creatures whose voices could penetrate souls, driving sailors mad, driving their ships into the rocks. Rotting shipwrecks clung to the cliffs. Human bones whitened in the water. Before, no one had survived the passage to the island. Jason, the leader, clutched his sword, worried. The heroes stood still, looking at each other in fear. When the Argo was only a short distance from falling into the abyss of death, Orpheus stood up. He did not shout. He did not give orders. He did not beg. He just put the lyre in his hand, gently plucked a note, then another, then a melody, sounded like the whisper of the sun before dawn. The sound of the harp entered the sailors' ears and penetrated the deepest part of their hearts, where they were once children lying beside their mothers, listening to the song. The Sirens still sang, but for the first time, they were out of tune. They screamed, their voices in disarray. One rushed off the cliff, smashed against the wall, and was destroyed. The music of Orpheus was so beautiful that even death could not interrupt. The Argo passed silently between two musical realms. One was enchantment, the other was liberation. They crossed the island of death, not with blood, not with magic, but with absolute beauty, the beauty of song that touched the soul. For the first time in Greek mythology, music defeated death. Love in Greek mythology is often the game of the gods, but Orpheus' love, not from lightning, not from magic, it came from the first sight and ended with a turn of the head. Eurydice was not a goddess, not a princess, just a common girl, beautiful in a way that makes flowers want to wither early to make room. They met when Orpheus was playing his harp by the stream, and she stopped by accident. Not a word, not a gesture, just the sound of the harp and the look. The two souls knew they had found each other. Their love was not as loud as Zeus, not as bright as Aphrodite. It was as quiet as the surface of deep water, where the light could not reach but was always present. They decided to get married. No dowry, no divine wedding. There was only the sound of the lyre and the wild flowers at her feet. But Greek mythology never loved anyone for long, and fate always hated pure love. On the wedding day, as Eurydice walked through the meadow, a poisonous snake hidden under the flowers bit her foot. She only let out a soft cry and collapsed before Orpheus could turn around. Not a last word, not a last glance. Only the sound of the wind blowing through the silent lyre. Orpheus did not cry, did not bang his head against the rocks, did not curse the gods. He just sat there and played. The music of a heart that had just had its soul ripped out of its chest. The muses were silent. Apollo bowed his head. Even Zeus did not dare to say a word. That music made the flowers not grow, the river stopped flowing. The moon refused to rise that night. The world felt its first primal sadness. The sadness of lost love untouched. And then, when no one dared to say what Orpheus could do, he played the first notes of the greatest music of his life. The journey to the underworld, without a spell, without a shield, without a guide. A single living man entered the world of the dead to reclaim the one he had lost. Over the river Styx, where souls wept. Over the pool of Lethe, where the dead forgot life. Over Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guarded the gates of the underworld, who listened to the music and lay down to sleep. At last, he came to the throne of Hades and Persephone. No one spoke. Orpheus did not beg. He just sat down and played. Hades, the unmoved god, shed tears. Persephone, goddess of the underworld, took her husband's hand and nodded. Hades said only one thing: take her away. But don't look back until you've both left the underworld. If Orpheus turns back, Eurydice will forever belong. There are moments that last only a blink of an eye, but they are enough to shatter the universe. That was the moment. Orpheus turned his head. The road from the underworld to the living world was cold, dark, and long. Orpheus walked ahead. Eurydice followed behind. Not allowed to touch, not allowed to call, not allowed to know if she was still following. Only the sound of his own footsteps and silence. The darkness faded. Light gradually appeared at the end of the tunnel. Just a few more steps, they would return to the living world. But Orpheus's heart, which had once moved thousands of creatures, could no longer bear the silence from the person he loved most. Are you still following me? Are you still real? Or just an illusion? Or just a dream? And then Orpheus turned his head. The light was only one step away. Eurydice was right behind him. Her hand was outstretched. But before she could cross the threshold of life, she vanished. No scream, no anger. Just one last look full of love, regret, and acceptance of fate. Eurydice turned back to the darkness. This time, no one was allowed to play. No one was allowed to ask. There was no second chance. From then on, Orpheus wandered everywhere. He did not speak. He did not eat. He did not sing to anyone. He played only for the stars. The music he wrote was no longer a song, but a broken soul. The trees still bowed their heads to listen. The birds still gathered. But Orpheus did not look at anyone. The only love he had vanished with a single turn of the head. How could he dare to look back at the world? But Greek mythology does not let the wandering souls wander for long. Orpheus must die. In a forest in Thrace, a group of Maenads, mad women who worshiped the wine god Dionysus, saw Orpheus playing a lute. They called to him. They invited him to join the lute, to dance with the god. But Orpheus refused. For in his heart there was only Apollo, the god of light and poetry. There was no place for Dionysus, the god of passion and oblivion. The Maenads were furious. They shouted, threw stones and branches at Orpheus, but nothing touched him. The lute continued to play, and the stones and sticks changed their minds in midair, falling aside. Finally, the Maenads rushed at him and tore him apart with their bare hands. And Orpheus died as he had lived, in the sound of the lute, in the silence of the universe. So, a man went to the underworld to reclaim his dead wife. A man used only music to fight against fate, and in the end, he was defeated by a single turn of the head. Orpheus died, but he did not really leave the world, because his music is still there, in the wind, in the leaves, in the hearts of those who loved and lost. So, a man went to the underworld to reclaim his dead wife. A man used only music to fight against fate, and in the end, he was defeated by a single turn of the head. Orpheus died, but he did not really leave the world, because his music is still there, in the wind, in the leaves, in the hearts of those who loved and lost.
The story of Orpheus does not end after death, because true music, like true love, does not need a body to live. When Orpheus's body was torn apart, the Muses, his mother, and the divine sisters shed tears. They gathered every piece of flesh, every strand of hair, every drop of dried blood that remained, and buried him at the foot of Mount Olympus, where the birds sang all night long, as if to continue his story. But the lyre, the thing he loved more than life itself, was never found, because the Muses took it to the sky. From then on, in the middle of the night sky, the constellation Lyra appeared, a symbol of music, of love, and of tragedy. And Orpheus's soul? No wandering, no reincarnation, no judgment. It is said that after his death, Orpheus was taken to the Fields of the Blessed, a place reserved for the pure and extraordinary souls. There, Eurydice was waiting. No need to play, no need to sing, no more trials, no more turning back. They walked hand in hand through the golden meadows beside the eternal stream, where time had no meaning and separation no longer existed. Orpheus's death did not end his influence. Later followers founded an ideology called Orphism, an ancient Greek spiritual school believing in the reincarnation of the soul, music as a gateway to the divine, and love as the way to overcome all fates. Orphic texts, poems, rituals were all attributed to from Orpheus. In the darkest days of ancient Greece, when people were skeptical of gods and order, the name Orpheus was still whispered in temples, in sacred forests, in dreams. Orpheus was not a warrior, not a king, not a demigod. He was just an artist in love with a woman. And because of that love, he crossed the sea with Jason, defied death with music, went to the underworld, and lost everything, just because he couldn't bear the silence once. We often ask, how to live long? But Orpheus left a different answer. The measure of life is its beauty, not its length. Plutarch. If you have ever lost, if you've ever loved someone so much that listening to their music makes your heart melt, leave a comment about the song that reminds you of someone. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more of the most beautiful tragedies of ancient Greece. We'll see you again in the next story.